At the beginning of my job, I never wanted anybody to know what I was thinking.
Yes.
More and more, I want to be more myself, more out, and say what I think.
But that honesty comes at a cost.
Miuccia Prada is regarded as one of the most influential and enigmatic fashion designers of modern times. For nearly 4 decades, she has displayed her penchant for setting trends and bucking the ideas of her fellow designers. The now 71-year-old, together with her CEO partner, Patrizio Bertelli, has transformed what was essentially a small family business into one of the world's most renowned multi-billion dollar fashion houses.
I never understood why being big you should be different. Maybe sounds strange. I don't understand why being a big company I have to think in a different way. I really don't understand why.
Miuccia Prada is a true iconoclast, and one who never ducked a challenge. Under her auteur-like direction, Prada has blended the old and the new, the ugly and the sublime, the vulgar and the simple, to show off a smorgasbord of original and unexpected ideas. No 2 collections have ever looked even vaguely the same. And it's obvious to any fashionista watching that each well-thought-out garment detail has come from a great mind. And the irony of the Prada Renaissance under Miuccia Prada started in 1985 with a choice of an unassuming fabric for her bags. Miuccia could have followed the likes of Louis Vuitton by brandishing a leather design with multiple gaudy logos, but instead, Prada went in a completely unheard of direction, choosing a fabric and feel that screamed function rather than fashion. Poconi, a military-grade nylon that was used by Prada's grandfather to cover trunks, was the key to Miuccia Prada's success. Starting with a series of waterproof backpacks, Prada eventually moved on to totes and more, all including a small black triangle bearing the Prada logo. Within months, the Poconi bags and backpacks were a global phenomenon, worn and lusted over by the fashion cognoscenti the world over. The Vela bags were born out of Prada's disdain for the bags of other luxury competitors, which she deemed too formal and traditional. What resulted was a complete transformation of what it meant to produce luxury goods. The nylon bags were a symbol of modernity. It allowed luxury to be subversive and go beyond the superficial. Prada, which belongs to one of the smaller conglomerates in the fashion industry, the Prada Group, began in 1913, when brothers Mario and Martino Prada began a family leather goods business. It was known as Fratelli Prada. The business was known for their bags, trunks, and steamers. Years later, Prada became the official supplier of the Italian royal house, allowing the business to display the House of Savoy coat of arms on their seal. It quickly became a symbol of wealth and aristocracy, used by only the upper echelons of society. Born in 1949, Miuccia Prada grew up conservatively in Milan. Foreshadowing her impact on the family's eponymous brand, Miuccia Prada's formative years are evidence that she was cut from a different cloth. She received her doctorate in political science from the University of Milan, inspired by her travels to France, England, and Ireland during her childhood and adolescence. She was famously a member of the Italian Communist Party, riding on the rebellious sentiments of Italian youth movements in the 60s, who felt disdain at the state of a newly modernized capitalist Italy. During her time at university, Miuccia Prada campaigned for women's rights and was vocal about reproductive rights and accessible childcare. Prada often talks about the conflict of being a radical feminist and someone involved in fashion at the same time.
I was grown up in the 60s and when the feminism and everybody connected to fashion and women business was for me the worst possible idea because I wanted to do anything possible except fashion. But at the end, I think I liked fashion and I liked object and between different things that I would start doing, at the end I did it. And only few years ago I realized that I completely accepted that I wanted to do this work.
But this dichotomy would be integral to her identity. You know, I had lots of courage to do fashion, she once said, because in theory, it was the least feminist work possible.
Of course, I had much more high desire, political, big dream of working on something more useful, or political, or anything else. So a fashion business was really the worst for me at the moment.
Her willingness to go against the grain and her understanding of women would come to define her aesthetic. Ultimately, she transformed Prada into a brand characterized by disruptive innovation, while simultaneously always having the female figure at the forefront of the design.
Each of your collections is some kind of throwing down the gauntlet to established ways of thinking. You know, sometimes even you'll challenge the idea of what it means to be avant-garde, and you'll put out a really conservative collection. Of course, it's conservative in quotes, you know, where you're really working with those things. And I remember that's what first made me notice your work.
In 1978, she took over the company after 2 decades of her maternal mother at the head of operations. Her initial attempts consisted of a luggage line and footwear, which saw little success. Behind the scenes, there was someone else driving the success of the brand. Patrizio Bertelli, fashion entrepreneur and one-time rival of the Prada family as a maker of leather goods, wed Miuccia Prada in 1978. Bertelli would become the mastermind behind the brand's business strategies, while Prada focused on the creative side.
I think that in general, the attitude of me and my husband and the company is to do something possibly beautiful and new and interesting and clever. If we do it or not, I don't know, but that is always our point of view.
It was Bertelli that inspired Prada to move beyond accessories and begin designing clothes. And Prada released a ready-to-wear women's wear collection in fall-winter 1998. The debut collection by Miuccia Prada was quintessential of the brand today, consisting of silhouettes inspired by men's tailoring, oversized and boxy, yet designed with women in mind. The collection is an ode to Miuccia's background in politics and her desire for the subversive, even claiming that the first collection was uniforms for the slightly disenfranchised. The pieces were designed as workwear, ranging from brown, a colour rarely seen on the runways at the time, to bolder reds and pinks. In the fashion community, the collection was not met with a unanimous acclaim. It was deemed an aberration by the traditional luxury crowd, but also too banal for the avant-gardists. But Prada resonated with the everyday woman, and it differentiated themselves from other luxury houses with their effortless and understated pieces. At the start, there was Versace, there was Armani, and everything was much more loud than what Miuccia was doing. It was the 90s when everyone had their eyes on Prada, an era where Miuccia Prada was pioneering ugly chic.
I'm kind of famous for introducing ugliness in fashion, but it's not that I introduce ugliness in fashion. They want to introduce normal life and pure life.
It was a stark contrast to the simple yet sexy looks that dominated the runways at the time, like the work of Tom Ford for Gucci in the 90s, characterized by biased cuts and revealing silhouettes. The term ugly chic was given to Prada by fashion critics and is perhaps best embodied in the Spring-Summer 1996 collection, titled Banal Eccentricity. Models wore famously librarian-esque skirts that looked stiff and had little movement, and colours like mustard, chartreuse and lilac. The patterns were reminiscent of wallpaper and curtains, and were accompanied with chunky slides and low-heeled sandals. This was the era of the supermodel, and 90s icons like Kate Moss, Kirsty Hume and Carolyn Murphy, wearing seemingly ugly clothes, helped to defy the standards set by other luxury houses at the time. The collection shocked the fashion world, but also transformed it. Fashion experts say it created a sartorial shift that had people seeking out the past and the vintage and willing to depart from ideas of the traditionally beautiful. In recent years, ugly chic has manifested in different ways, and the term has become synonymous with the brand's tendency to be subversive.
What Muiccia has always done is really sort of take the absolute classic item of clothing in your wardrobe and reinvent it in the most modern, directional, futuristic, functional way.
I loved the way she always takes risks on the runway.
I think virtually every season she comes up with something very unexpected and jarring.
The collection of Spring-Summer 2014 was an outward display of Miuccia Prada's feminist beliefs, celebrating the strength of women. The collection was a mixing and matching of fabrics like fur, jewels and knitwear, as well as having a diverse colour palette of khaki, blue, bright red, yellow and green. The sportswear-inspired collection was heavy and bold, especially for the summer. But perhaps the most important aspect was the overlay of bralettes onto the pieces. In doing so, she reframed the intimate as something to be seen rather than hidden, and commenting on the autonomy of women. The juxtaposition of utilitarian clothing with quintessentially feminine pieces is something Miuccia Prada does often. Seen again in Autumn-Winter 2016, where ugly chic is seen in the printed argyle tights and brocade patterning. Prada keeps her touch of femininity by cinching in at the waist of an oversized boxy coat with a bustier. However, Prada goes beyond their association with ugly chic, and Miuccia Prada is renowned for her reflexivity and pragmatism.
You don't have a lot to experiment, because at the end you have to do clothes that sells, first of all, that they are useful, that people can wear, as eccentric as it could be, but wearable, because that is much more important for me than just artistic creation that I'm not interested. But of course, I struggle the whole time to try to do something new and to do some movement and to express more contradiction in that little space that I have.
Miuccia Prada reminds the fashion world that Prada can still do sexy with the 2002 fall collection, which featured tight skirts, fur bombers and see-through vinyl jackets. It featured the classic influences of workwear and men's-inspired coats, but the collection was notably more sophisticated and was born out of Miuccia's desire to prove everyone's misconceptions about Prada wrong. She would continue to reference traditional femininity in later collections, like the Autumn 2008 collection, with classic ladylike silhouettes combined with lace.
It's very much about sometimes what I like, but sometimes also analyzing
what's trending, why people like something, and try to find an ironic way to look at it like from outside. For instance, when I did the lace, I asked why women always like lace, and so try to analyze the reason. This is something that I like at the moment.
Miuccia Prada also defined the norms with her kitschness and her ability to put colours, prints and materials together. It was this that would produce some of the most iconic styles that Prada is known for, like the flame heels featured in the Spring-Summer 2012 collection. The hot rod heels quickly became a fan favourite and were even re-released years later. Another example of Miuccia Prada's love for the almost tacky is seen in the famous Prada banana print, which was the star of the show for the Spring-Summer 2011 collection, and quickly became one of the hottest trends of the season.
Even when I'm uncertain, I push even more, because the only way to make something reasonable out of something that is completely maybe wrong is really to push so much that eventually it's an excess, and eventually say the truth of what I'm thinking. So when I did the banana collection with the fur, with the stripe, and those monkeys, and all this crazy baroque, and I was sure it was a total disaster. But it turned out that people are much more ready to accept craziness than people think.
Miuccia Prada knows how to dress a woman, but the Prada menswear line receives the same accolades as the women's wear equivalent. It now accounts for 30% of the company's sales. Prada cleverly employs the same principles: clean-cut tailoring and mixing and matching of prints, textiles and colours, but does so in a way that makes the exaggerated more accessible for the everyday man. The menswear Fall 2016 collection was critically acclaimed, celebrated for the layers, tailoring, and the nautical-inspired looks. But Miuccia Prada also tries to push the boundaries with her menswear line. The menswear Spring-Summer 2019 collection featured the kitschy and almost ugly signature Prada touch, with vivid clashing patterns and short shorts. Today, Prada has amassed an empire worth over $11 billion. They have cemented their place in the fashion world and have even made their forays into sportswear with Prada Linea Rossa, a brand that is loved amongst streetwear fans today, and even into the broader world of art and culture with Fondazione Prada, an institution dedicated to showcasing artists in Milan. Prada has put a number of measures in place to ensure its longevity, namely in their commitments to sustainability. Lorenzo Bertelli, the son of Patrizio Bertelli and Miuccia Prada, is the next to join the family dynasty and has been the head of marketing and communications since September 2017. It is Bertelli who is ensuring that Prada is ready for the new generation, like changing Prada's new online retail strategy to cater to a modern audience. He is also pioneering one of the brand's most significant sustainability movements, the Nylon range.
This is where the regeneration process takes place, where the nylon waste is transformed into monomer.
So how do you ensure that the nylon you're making is as pure as, say, virgin nylon?
It is not a normal mechanical recycling, but it's a chemical process. So it's returning to the original building blocks. And we are able to reproduce really pristine nylon, exactly like the one that you may have from oil.
Seeing as it was nylon that was the catalyst for Prada's upward trajectory, the fashion house is cleverly transforming themselves without losing their essence. With Bertelli and Prada at the helm since the house's debut into ready-to-wear in 1988, one of the most asked questions in the fashion industry is who will be the successor to the husband and wife duo. Upon Lorenzo Bertelli's induction to the company, Patrizio Bertelli hinted that his son could eventually be the head of Prada. However, the biggest hint of succession came in February of 2020 when it was announced that Raf Simons would be the co-creative director of Prada, alongside Miuccia Prada.
Actually, it came out kind of spontaneously. In different interviews in the past, I thought we said, why not? Why not working together one day? And all in a sudden, one day it happened.
I think we've always been very interested in each other's work. And obviously we met quite a long time ago already because Miuccia and Mr. Bertelli offered me the position at Jill Sander many years ago.
Raf Simons has become a name quickly associated with today's men's streetwear market and could potentially bring in new audiences for the fashion house. It is a collaboration in which they both value simplicity, originality, and modernity. The creative partnership is perhaps another answer to the question of succession, despite Prada vehemently denying that Miuccia Prada is looking to step down. Miuccia Prada is now 71 years old, and Miuccia and Patrizio are undoubtedly looking for the next generation of talent to heir their Prada throne.
The pure definition of new for me means like it's really something we've never seen before. I think it's a new person coming in. It's a young new generation coming in. They should bring new.
With a legacy like Prada's, it is difficult to envision someone else with creative control that has consistently transformed the fashion industry for the last 4 decades.
A piece of clothing serves the rule of making you live better. So it's for you and it's for your life. So it's not an abstract job. The result of my job is that people with my clothes probably feel a bit better, they can live a bit better, so it has to be useful and help define your personality, even if you want to change. One day you want to be somebody, one day you want to be somebody else, depends the occasion. So really think about that is an instrument for your life.